for a real treat.
All right, gentlemen. The first NEVIC Zoom meeting for February. And I want to welcome you all. Before I have a couple of announcements, I first want to welcome Tom Kleinschmidt. A number of you have met him in the past. He's the president of the Antique Radio Club of Illinois. And he's been on our past Zoom meetings at least twice. And I've always enjoyed having him. And Tom graciously, I had thrown an email out to him to say, hey, we're going to be showing some photos from your recent swap meets. Would you like to join us? Because I realized, geez, we haven't had Tom on in a while. And he graciously volunteered to give us a presentation on AC Gilbert radios. So we get a bonus on top of it. So I really have to thank Tom for that. So on the announcement side, there's just a couple of things before I hand off to Bob is do keep an eye on our website. Of course, our big show on March 3rd, the New England Vintage Electronics Expo 7 at Castleton on March 3rd. Tables are filling up slowly but surely, and they're starting to spike up. So if you haven't bought a table and are thinking about it, better think about it soon. The only other announcement I can think of that precedes it on February 24th is the Vintage Radio and Communications Museum of Connecticut. They'll have a swap meet on February 24th. So in case you want to double dip successive weekends, there's your opportunity to get some toys 2 weekends in a row. Just save your money for our show. But at any rate, I think those are the announcements I can think of offhand. So I'm going to hand off to Bob in case he wants to add more to that.
Hi. The only thing I'd add to John's announcement about New England Vintage Electronics Expo 7, which is March 3rd, is that if you want to sell and buy a table, we've sold at least half the tables. So this is your time now to reserve a table. The other item I'd like to mention is that if you choose to stay overnight in the area, the club made arrangements for a discount at the Holiday Inn in Salem. The details are in the Raven. There's a link that if you click on, it gives you the discount. That's all I'll say here. I would look forward to seeing you on March 3rd. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Oh, and one other thing, I'm wearing earphones this time around because I know in the past people have complained about my microphone on my laptop. So I'm going to see if this solves the problem. So do keep me feedback if anyone doesn't like us. So Tom's giving me the thumbs up. So that looks promising. So this may be the cheap solution instead of fiddling with the various Zoom microphone controls in the hope that I can get something to work. And I think it's probably more my laptop than anything else. But this I decided would be an easy circumvention. And hopefully that will keep that going forward here. But and before I hand off to Tom, does anyone have any announcements, anything else we might have missed, any other vintage electronics events or things that maybe I've not thought about?
John?
Sure.
Brad here.
Hey, Brad.
I'd like to try holding a poster, an ad poster, up to the camera to see if anybody has ever seen one of these radios.
Oh, okay, let's see if I can spotlight you here. Your video is not on here, by the way, Brad.
What's happening?
Your video is not on.
Oh,
We just have audio.
It's not video. Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. That is.
Whoop.
Where is that little sticker?
Cool.
Can you see that? Okay. It's a Zenith. No, that's okay.
Is there a poster that if you can't show easily here, would you be able to take a photograph and share on our email reflector? Because I could also, what's the gist of it there, Brad?
This is a 1949 Zenith
Oh, okay.
FM receiver. And I was wondering if anybody had ever seen one of these things in the flesh or the plastic, because I sure haven't. It's just a very basic radio with a tuning knob and a volume control and a switch.
Can you hold it up a little higher? Maybe we can see it
Yeah.
then.
Let me give it a shot. This magazine has a bound volume, and it has a struggling.
No problem. Take your time there, Brad.
Yeah, here it is. It's called the Zenith Major. Okay, here goes.
There we go. Just
Back
move
up a
little-
bit.
Yeah, back up and just a little bit to your right. Okay, back up a little bit. Towards you. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Got it?
Yeah. Now, is this a radio you have, or you're just curious because you saw it for the first time in a magazine?
Well, this is the first time I've ever. Now that will give me points for bouncing it off the. Okay, this magazine is called Teletech, formerly Electronic Industries.
Oh, okay.
This is September 1949 issue.
Oh, okay.
It has this large pull-out touting their FM products, receivers. And
Does the text say it was a consumer radio, or were they trying to target some commercial market?
well, it says it's the most sensitive FM radio ever offered to the public. So it seems like
Public kind of says the whole thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, there we go. I've never seen one.
I have not.
I have.
you have.
Ah,
I actually have a friend that has one.
oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah, it's just a really strange Zenith FM only radio. It's 7H something. I don't remember the rest of it. Maybe Greg, have you ever seen one of them?
I've seen a similar one, not that exact model.
I guess the trick is the trick question is what's the IF? Because there's some weird, everybody would expect, or I would expect 10.7 or something like that megahertz for the IF, but I've come across some of these radios with an oddball IF frequency. Makes it hard to fix if you need coils and things.
I would think that most Zeniths were 10.7, so I would think this one would be no different.
Well,
I've never had one apart. I don't know. I haven't owned one, but like I say, I know somebody that did have one. He still has it.
well, it has the secret, according to this, is matchless performance by a super sensitive FM circuit perfected by Zenith. It's the as the Zenith Armstrong FM products. So that would argue kind of that it's still 10.7 IF maybe.
I know that the fellow here in New Jersey that has a, I don't know, I think about 8 or 9 FM only tabletop radios, and that's one of them.
Huh.
Wow.
Interesting. So the question is, does it live to its billing? Being the most sensitive FM radio around.
I think that's my pillow marketing, probably.
Probably.
I don't know. Call it a nasty name and see if it cries.
There you go.
There we go. So,
Well, it shouldn't have one of those famous Zenith IF cans that Bob was talking about, where it's got two sets of micas in one can or something. Didn't Zenith have those with AM and FM? They had a
Yeah,
IF can.
the little ones that are portable. I can't remember the model
Yeah.
number of those, but the smaller ones had that kind of a setup on it. It was kind of odd.
a double nightmare.
so did anyone else have any announcements or anything before we get to the main part of our event?
I don't know if it qualifies as an announcement. Well, I guess it
Okay.
does. There's an announcement and also a question, and I'm not sure if I can pull off just a very quick share, but
Okay.
I'm zooming from a hotel room in Florida because I'm on vacation.
Okay.
And I went to an amazing audio record, crazy warehouse type place that I think could be a Zoom topic for a future event. I took a ton of pictures. You've
Oh,
never
good.
seen so much amazing. It's a little bit more NEVIC than NEARC. There is some older equipment in there, but a lot of it is like 50s, 60s, 70s type
Awesome.
audio,
Mhm.
vintage audio equipment, and more records than anyone has ever seen in one place in their lifetime. Albums, 45, 78s, reel-to-reel tapes, 8 tracks, cassettes. Is just a crazy place. So I took a ton of photos, and I'm not very good at doing this kind of thing, but some future event I can just kind of go when I'm back home and on my PC. Hopefully I can do a better job of scrolling through the photos and trying to share them on my phone here and now. But so that's for, I'll work with you, John, on figuring out how to get that on the schedule for some future event. It's an amazing place called Bananas. And the guy is really bananas, but it's an amazing thing. The other thing is I picked up a radio from my friend. I gave it to him as a present like 5 years ago. I think I talked about it. It's a Model 7T. And I think the transformer has gone bye-bye. So I might be looking for some help, or if somebody's got some parts chassis or something like that, I'll be looking for the appropriate power transformer for a 7T radio. I do have a picture of the transformer. I don't know if I can share it when I'm on the phone, or if everybody automatically knows what that radio is and I don't have to bother sharing it. But you could check your parts bins, see whether or not you've got something like that, or a recommendation of what I should use instead of the original. It's a Tombstone table model set, and he played it a lot for 5 years after I gave it to him. I recapped it and checked all the resistance values and all that. And last month he kind of started to smell something funny, so thankfully he shut it off right away. And I kind of gave it the sniff test, and it sure seems like it's probably the transformer. But I'm going to bring it home with me and then do a deeper dive. But I'm assuming that I'm going to be looking around for a replacement power transformer.
Is it an above chassis or through chassis mount?
Above chassis.
Should be fairly easy to find something.
Yeah. Yep.
Well,
I might even have one in my
early. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said I might even have one in my collection, but I need some dimensions.
Right.
I have about 300 transformers.
Well,
I could probably get back to you with an actual. I don't know if I'm sharing or not because I'm on my phone.
You are not right now.
Okay.
You were a moment ago, in fact, actually, but
Well, you can just email me a picture of it, and anytime K1DFT@ARRL.net or RobVI3. That's ROB Victor India 3 @gmail.com.
I can either mail that to you or Rob if you want. You can throw it in the chat.
One or the
okay.
other. But I have quite a collection of transformers. That's why I.
Okay, yeah,
One thing I
and then
did-
which leads to another question: do I put in another 80-year-old transformer that hasn't melted down yet, or do I come up with a more modern equivalent
Well,
so that
that all depends. If you want to, I probably have some transformers that are fairly newer transformers that would probably do the trick.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, great. Just wanted to throw it out there so people
Yeah.
can start thinking about it. And again, I'm doing this on my phone, so I hit the share button and I hit share photos, and then I put a little check mark next to a picture of the transformer, but I have no idea if it's really going to do it.
it
Okay.
happened, I think, inadvertently for you earlier. In fact, I apologize.
Yes.
No, I had to kill the share just when Brad was going to show his picture, but it does work,
Okay.
at least occasionally.
Yeah, John, I have something to share with the group also.
Sure, go ahead, Rob.
Before we get started.
just before
Have
you
you
jump.
Have any of you heard of the New England Wireless and Steam Museum?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I am now their archivist, I guess, and antiquities uh, um, consultant.
Okay.
Apparently, they asked me to become a volunteer and help them out with identifying the thousands of radios that they have, as well as all other materials and vintage wireless equipment. It's astounding, the size of the collection.
Did you
I-
get down into the basement of the building where they have even more about Rob?
I have been through all the basements,
Okay, good.
and I talked to the director, and I explained to him that I am a member of the New England Vintage Electronics Club, and that we do Zoom meetings every now and then, and I would like to do a Zoom meeting and take you for a tour of this place.
That'd be awesome. That'd be truly awesome.
So I have to set it up, and I'll work on that, but I don't know what's the best way to, it has, of course, it has Wi-Fi and you know, internet connection and everything. But I have to come up with some kind of little portable camera that I can link to my computer and move it around, because it's going to be
Right.
difficult with the
Do you-
computer.
Do you have, Rob, any chance like a tablet, like a iPad, Fire tablet, et cetera, et cetera?
No, I don't. I
Okay.
don't have a tablet.
One
Okay.
of the solutions is to use your cell phone as the camera, just
Yeah.
stabilize, hold it steady, and it works really well.
Okay.
John Gibbons did that for a number of demonstrations, and it makes for a very easy walk around. The microphone's open, so you
Yep.
can talk us through it.
Yeah, that's absolutely
Yeah.
another
I
option.
would talk to Randy, the director. He has a setup for doing that kind of stuff,
Oh, does
the
he?
camera, and yeah, I would talk to him
Okay. I will. I'm
because
going to see
I've
him
seen
tomorrow.
he's done that.
Mhm. Okay.
Oh, that's,
I will talk to him tomorrow, and he was familiar with the vintage New England Vintage Electronics Club, and he's has anybody ever seen the collection? I'm looking at Tom's collection of keys he has in the back there. Has anyone ever seen the collection of keys they have?
no.
There
Tom.
must
Yeah,
be
no,
at least.
I've seen it, and there's tons more down in the basement.
That's where I was looking, and that's right. There's at least 300 or 400 keys in the basement,
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
plus another 200 or 300 upstairs in display. And they didn't even know what they had in the basement. There was a lot of them in boxes, carrying cases. And I opened up one of the cases, and in that case was an original Horace Martin key, Vibroplex, made in, it's got the 1904 date, but the serial number is 1002, and I expect it was probably made in 05. And they also have some very, very interesting keys there. They have a blue key. Does anybody know anything about the blue keys? They're
Sure,
Swiss
it's
keys.
a blue, called a blue racer, and
Oh, no. These are like pale sky blue. I did a lot of research on it, and I found out that this is like there was only one of these. There were 10 of these made by a clockmaker in Switzerland during World War II. And there was only supposedly one surviving key, but I think there is now two, because they have one of these in the basement.
Bob Merriam was very secretive about that basement, and he
Yeah.
was very careful to keep people out of there. So you may need help in identifying some of this stuff. I have 3,000 keys on my website and a book, which Bob may have, and that might be helpful if you run into things.
Which is this? Tom,
Yeah,
as in French?
no, the other Tom. Tom
okay.
French unfortunately has passed away.
Yes, I
Um,
was gonna say, yes, I've been reading quite a bit. I've read about 4 books in this week alone. So I had a
If
little
you
catching up to do.
if you get something that you don't know what it is, just send me an email. I'm tom@w1tp.com.
Okay.
W1 Tango Papa.
Okay, I'll remember that. I will
Yeah.
probably send you something anyway.
Yeah.
Because I'm like a sponge right now, just getting as much information as I can.
Make sure that you have a copy of my book, Telegraph Collector's Guidebook. It should be there. I know I gave Bob a couple of copies.
Okay, I'll look around. Yeah, they have a lot of the older people have left, and of course Bob died. And Tommy Olson's no longer there, and a lot of others are no longer there. And they heard about me, and they said, So when I showed up for the radio club winter field day, they wasted no time. So,
Well, Rob, feel free when you can make arrangements, feel free to reach out to me and we'll pencil you
I
in.
will.
It sounds like a great presentation. And I likewise know the Bananas Museum. Yeah, let me know when you're good to go. We'll we can even meet ahead of time.
Okay.
We'll get you scheduled in.
yeah, it's going to take me a
Noah.
little while to set it up. I'm still trying to get I have to talk to them and let them know that, I mean, they meet for maybe 4 hours once a week on Thursday mornings. The volunteers meet, and they want me to to work with cataloging everything. And I told them, I said, you're going to need more than 4 hours a week.
Yeah. All right.
So that's my announcement.
So super. No, thank you. That's a great announcement, actually, from both you and Noah. Those sound like great opportunities for some really interesting topics in the upcoming Zoom meeting. So yeah, I'm all in. So just both you guys just feel free to reach out to me, and I will pencil you in, and of course help if you need anything on the front end. And don't Bob Salzman had thrown a link on about using your phone as a camera.
Okay, I know Bob too.
All right, great. Well, then I think I'll hand off to Tom to do his presentation on AC Gilbert radios. So without further
Hey, John.
ado- Yeah, sure. What's up, Carl?
Just is Noah still on?
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, hi Noah. This is Carl. Where in Florida are you?
Right now, basically St. Petersburg.
Okay, all right. Because I'm actually in South Carolina, headed for Florida tomorrow, and this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is Hamcation at Orlando, and it's a huge flea market and things like that. So if you're looking for something to do, stop on by. This is one of my bucket list trips, and just about there. It's a long way from Mid-Coast Maine.
Right, definitely is. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Well, I know. I hope you brought a trailer.
I brought a Ford Flex. There's a pretty good amount of room.
All right, so you won't come home empty-handed, hopefully.
No, part of that trip to the bananas and part of the slideshow will be about the fact that I was doing some dumpster diving. And some people were showing up with a humongous van full of records, LPs that they were going to just hand over to this place because they didn't know what else to do with them. And then met them in the parking lot, and they gave me a shot at going through some of them. So I wound up with a bunch of records in the back of my van.
All right, that's a start. All right. Okay, Tom, I'm going to hand off to you, and I'm going to thank you again ahead of time for your gracious volunteering of this interesting topic.
Give me 2 seconds because
Sure.
I'm responding to a inquiry here.
Take your time. It's not a problem.
Where is Bananas in Florida?
You know what? Whoop, no, it froze, or at least it froze on my screen. There he is. Hey, you know, you're muted, but he was wondering where Bananas is located. Maybe now it doesn't hear.
Yeah, I'm doing this on my phone, so it's the GUI is not as good as on a PC, so it took me a while to get to the unmute button. Yeah, it's in St. Petersburg. Don't have the address right in front of me, but if you looked up, just I'm sure if you Googled Bananas, you know, records or audio or whatever, there's 3 facilities. There's a Bananas that is sort of like the retail location where they have tons and tons and tons of albums, and then a lot of audio and video gear and vintage and antique stuff on display. And then I wound up talking to the people there, and that's when I found out that there were not 1 but 2 warehouses in the neighborhood in St. Petersburg where there's just an incredible amount of audio gear and the rest of the records. And you can go to this facility. They're closed on Sundays and Mondays, but they're open Tuesday through Saturday from noon to 5. And it's just crazy. It's just how many records and 8-tracks and reel-to-reels and cassettes and receivers and power amplifiers and turntables and speakers, and just it's crazy. It's just crazy. It takes 3 buildings to hold it all.
You're aware that bananas are the only digital fruit. Yeah, the purchase and eaten in cereal.
Cool.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up there a little bit. I didn't hear that.
Bananas, you know, the only truly digital fruit. They're purchased in parallel and eaten in cereal.
Good one.
Also, in Orlando, there's a place called Skycraft Surplus, which is kind of interesting. You know, not so much old radio, but a lot of surplus electronics, lots of parts, hardware, wire, that kind of stuff. So if you're in Orlando looking for something to do, it's called Skycraft.
Good to know.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Tom.
I'm ready when you're ready. Sorry for the delay.
No worries. We fill the time easily.
Yes, I noticed. You guys do a good job.
No problem.
I will share my screen if you're ready for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me get this thing into presentation mode, if it'll let me.
There you go.
There we are. So you got it faster than I did, and I'm looking at it.
That was familiar. I think I had one of those sets.
So just a couple things up front is I did this presentation for the Antique Radio Club of Illinois Zoom meeting back in, I think, November. And I also need to point out that you guys are native of the location where this stuff was built, and I'm not. So New Haven, Connecticut was where the headquarters of AC Gilbert was. And obviously I'm talking to you from Chicago, so what do I know? But anyway, for a short time, Gilbert made radios. So we're going to talk about that and a few other things related. And I'm not going to talk about erector sets except for this picture, because everybody knows what an erector set is and knows what American Flyer trains are and their chemistry sets. And we're not going to talk about it. So there's the man himself. And so here we go. Well, one of the things when I did the research on this is there's things attributed to him that may or may not be correct, and or they got the details wrong. I got the same topic with conflicting details. So I tried to make sure I had some kind of a reference bit of information. So you'll find whenever I do these things or do an article, I always have a whole bunch of where I got my information. And so you'll see superscripts next to certain things just to refer back to where I got the information. So here we go. So as a man, he had 150 patents. He won a gold medal for pole vault at the Olympics in London. He was an outdoorsman. He had I think 3 hunting and fishing cabins around the U.S. I think mostly on the East Coast. The original company was called Misto Manufacturing that made magic sets. He enjoyed magic from a little kid, and Misto brand is on the first erector sets, and then they changed the name of the company to AC Gilbert. He has an MD from Yale because he wanted to be an athletic director, and you needed an MD back in those days to do that. He never officially used that, but that's kind of the really short version. I have got a band of information blocking my view a bit here, guys, so I apologize. I don't know how to get rid of it. Now all I can do is leave the meeting. That's interesting. All right. So anyway, he's been attributed with inventing enameled wire, which he didn't do. He used a lot of it. The guy that actually is attributed with is a gentleman named George Jacobs, and he was affiliated with General Electric, I believe. So I did a patent search trying to find a patent that had enameled wire and couldn't, at least with AC Gilbert or his company name on it. But as we all know, having radios, enameled wire allows you to get the windings of the coils closer together and get a more efficient inductor. So the picture on the bottom right is actually a magnet out of an erector set. If you ever had an erector set with an electromagnet, that's they get quite hot too. So from a child safety viewpoint, you'd never get that again.
True.
So so early on, he had a radio station called WCJ, and basically not for very long, about a year and a bit. And so as a reference, he was September of 21 to December of 22, and KDKA started in 1916, shut down for World War I, then opened up again in 1920. CD Tuska, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, you guys have heard of Tuska radios, I'm sure. He had a radio station that started just slightly before Gilbert's, and I think there were 3 radio stations in the area. And so he was sending out Morse code initially and news reports by Morse code, and then they later went on to voice broadcast. But they had a tower that they had erected, and they used the smokestack of the factory as the other end of the antenna for the flat top antenna. And so back to Mr. Tuska. He's the key guy. He actually, whoops. Hang on, we had a false move.
No problem.
Back this up. He actually designed the radios that Gilbert sold and made up quite a few of them. And he was introduced by a guy named Maxim. And for those of you who have ARRL email addresses, Tuska and Maxim co-founded the ARRL. So when Tuska was a student, he commuted to New Haven from Hartford once a week to go work on radio stuff for AC Gilbert. He also developed a trench radio for Gilbert to make for World War I efforts. And the big difference between the two of the guys philosophically is Gilbert was trying to make toys for boys that had an educational element to them, and Tuska was trying to make serious radios. So, you know, the quote quasi here was you can't apply toy manufacturing to amateur radio manufacturing. And but they did work together, and Tuska did make inexpensive sets so they could teach fundamentals. He also was a pretty good author of all the books that, or booklets, I guess, that AC Gilbert provided with radios. And the key thing here is he had the Armstrong regeneration patent rights. So he worked with Gilbert till 23. We talked about the making. So here's an interesting situation. They built radios in-house at Tuska and with outside contractors and at Gilbert's factory, and that caused Westinghouse to get their nose out of joint, because from their viewpoint, that was a transfer of the Armstrong patent and it wasn't authorized. The sets they made in the AC Gilbert world were mostly breadboards. So here's what the combination of radios and the radio station come together. Gilbert got a New Haven passenger car and made it into a showroom. So the part behind where it says Gilbert Toys all the way to the back of the car is all a big display. Like you walk in and there's showcases and stuff, and then he had a conference room and so on the other end of the car. And when they were in the New Haven area, they would pick up broadcasts from WCJ. And we have to recognize that radio was a new thing back then. So a lot of people had not heard a radio broadcast before. But he went as far as Michigan with his promotions. And of course, you couldn't pick up WCJ in Michigan. So they'd have somebody outside the car either broadcasting or just with a microphone tied into the loudspeaker, pretending to do a broadcast without, of course, really telling anybody they were doing that. So a little bit of smoke and mirrors, but that was pretty common back then. So the lousy graphic here, but if you look, this is a Gilbert radio, telephone, and broadcasting book, and you see it's by Clarence D. Tuska. And then Gilbert is also credited, obviously, because it was provided by Gilbert. But and Gilbert early on went to wood cabinet radios, and the world wasn't quite ready for wood cabinet radios, and so they didn't have a lot of success with that. The breadboards were still the norm. So this is a toy side thing of a radio kit, and telegraph kit in this case, and this "Hello Boys" moniker up here is something he used on all of his advertising. He wanted to be the boy's best friend when it came to this kind of stuff. Then they came out with a toy. If you've ever done the thing with the BBs in the holes when you were a kid, they basically made BB kind of things that looked like tubes, and you had to get the tubes in the tube sockets. That wasn't related to the radio business per se. It was more related to the fact that radio was the hot thing. So anything related to radio was of interest to people. And so here is a picture of a Gilbert radio / Tuska radio. And all the model numbers look to be a 4000 series model number. In fact, by coincidence, at our radio meet on Saturday, I actually picked up a catalog number 1, which is the products that started up the Gilbert piece. And there wasn't much for breadboards in there, but that's what is attributed to being the products that the Gilbert radios were based on. Around here, we don't see anything Gilbert. I happened to actually pick up, and I'll show you in a minute, so won't get ahead of myself. So here's a cabinet radio, obviously, and here's another booklet, and but I picked up this set of headsets. You know how you go to a swap meet and there's always boxes full of headsets, and people are having trouble getting rid of them. And I dug through the box, and it says AC Gilbert Company, as you can see in the upper right. And don't know who made it. I haven't started comparing to enough headsets to figure out who made this one for them, because they didn't make it, I'm pretty sure. But so that's my only artifact that is an official AC Gilbert piece of equipment. So there's an interesting interview. Oops, sorry, did it again. Interesting interview that was with AC years later, and he said, I'll just do the highlighted part here. After a few years, we gave up on the radio business, broadcasting as well as manufacturing. Litigation over our use of vacuum tubes, and it really wasn't our core business. So I just gave the whole thing to Tuska, our rights and the whole works. So that's the ins and the outs, real quick. But later on, he was a broadcaster on NBC and does a sports talk show. Again, his love is athletics. And he had Babe Ruth as one of his guests, and his being a consummate promoter, he knew having Babe Ruth in there while he was advertising Gilbert products would give him a leg up. So as we see, he did a whole bunch of different stuff, kind of a Renaissance guy, a successful businessman, toy maker. And I'll tell you, this is just scratching the surface. There's a couple of good books about Mr. Gilbert. There's a whole bunch of stuff online. There's the AC Gilbert Historical or Heritage Society, which has a website, and they have get-togethers 2 or 3 times a year. A couple of them are here in the Midwest. The national meet happened to be back at New Haven last year. And so, as I mentioned, I have, kind of the bibliography here of all the things where I attributed my information to. So that covers it.
Oh, that was great. Especially since it is, like you said, right in our backyard.
Yeah, I think you have to unshare me. I'm not sure that I can. Oh, I can say stop share. Never mind.
Oh, that's all right. Gotcha.
Yeah, we both did it at the same time. I think.
Yeah, I don't know who
I
drew
grew
first.
up with Gilbert stuff.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah, I had a chemistry set. I used to make all kinds of stuff in the cellar. Would stink up the house sometimes. Then I had American Flyer train set and oh, God knows what else I had. Whole bunch of stuff. Back in my childhood days, which is a long time ago.
They had some amazing kits. I believe I had what they called a cloud chamber, which was a little radioactive speck in the middle of a round glass dome, and you would pressurize it, and you could look at the radioactive particles, their path through the moist air. Probably really dangerous, like their chemistry
Oh, yeah,
sets. Yeah.
when I think of the things that I did with the chemistry set, all this stuff would be classified today as hazardous waste. I mean, we used to have experiments with mercury, and just all kinds of crazy stuff. It was nuts. And I had one of them was a weather set. It had the for measuring humidity and temperature, the whole bit. After a while, my father would ask me, what's the weather today?
Look out the window, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they were great stuff.
It's a fascinating company, and I don't know if I've ever come across one of those trench sets. I imagine must be the standard little World War I telegraph set with a little diaphragm over the key to keep the mud out and all, but I don't think I've ever seen one with Gilbert's name on it.
It's funny, but we grew up in a time where, a lot of this stuff today, you couldn't get approved for kids to play with. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
a while back, I was teaching a course to a bunch of Boy Scouts for a Boy Scout badge in electronics and radio. And one of the things that I wanted to impress upon them was the fact that stuff could be dangerous. And so what I did is 1 week we had a subject all about capacitors. So I had a huge capacitor, big one, and I charged that baby up and I put it in a box. And I brought it in, and when I had all other capacitors, and we were talking about capacitors and what they do and how they did it and everything else. And then I wanted to explain to them and impress upon them how dangerous they can be. So I put this big, huge capacitor down on the table, and with a screwdriver, I discharged it. I swear to God, some of those kids went about 4 feet off the floor. But and so did some of the parents. But and some of the parents were a little upset over the demonstration. But I told them, I said, they'll never forget it.
In New York City, we had a chemical supply company, and you could actually walk in there and buy all the chemicals to make gunpowder. You'd walk in, and it was called John Wynn Chemical, about the 30s or so, and you could walk in. I'd go in there. I'd like a little carbon. I like a little potassium nitrate, and I'd like a little sulfur. And the guy with a completely straight face, he'd sell this stuff to me.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Well, I have
That was one of my favorite subjects when I had my chemistry set was I used to make explosives.
Yeah, talk about explosives. When I discovered that you could generate hydrogen and oxygen with electrolysis, I realized that the building that I grew up in had DC, 110 volts DC rather than AC. It was one of the buildings supplied by Edison. And I filled a bathtub with water, threw in a little salt to make it conductive, put one end of the AC AC line or DC line in one
and-
end, and in the other end, I collected hydrogen on one side, oxygen on the other, and mixed them together and lit them. Holy mackerel, what a bang. Amazing that I didn't kill myself.
Oh, I know. It's amazing we all didn't kill ourselves when we were growing up.
Hey, Tom, you mentioned that you had gotten chemicals at a chemical supply house. When I was a teen, I bought them at the local pharmacy.
Right.
And,
That's true, you
and
could,
as
yeah.
Tom knows, I had that, I remember the chemistry sets were sold in tiers, and it was basically the number of little vials of chemicals that you got. And I think my parents had gotten me the one that folds out like 6 tiers, and it had 120 chemicals in it. And yeah, like the rest of you, I did some nasty things. But in my case, I ended up spending 35 years in the professional fireworks business. So it actually materialized for me. So I got paid to blow stuff up.
Yep.
I can tell you a story about, so it's 1959, I think. I'm 15 years old and I'm working as a bench repair tech at the local radio shop. And I'm a smart kid. I said, hey, how come we're using alcohol to clean the pots and switches? We should get this stuff called carbon tetrachloride. It does a really great job. And the senior guy says, well, I got to tell you about that. He said, we used to have a man working here who used carbon tet to do everything, including washing his hands. Until
Yeah.
one in 5-gallon pails. And he said, and he used this stuff lavishly. And he said, until one day his liver fell apart and he died. Now, does that answer your questions about why we're using wood alcohol instead of carbon tet? I kind of slunk away after that.
I worked as in a machine shop, making all kinds of widgets. I was training to be a tool maker. This was in my early high school days. And one of the jobs they had me doing was cleaning all these pots. This guy that I had been working for invented the clip-on bow tie clip. So they used to make all the pots, and before they put them all together, they would wash all the machining oil and everything off them from stamping and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I had, was a device that you put all the metal parts into this bin, and it was like a washing machine, and you dumped in carbon tetrachloride and you put the lid down, and it had an exhaust valve going out through the roof, and you just let it run. And then later on you took that bin out and poured it into another bin, and you filled those bins up and somebody took them away. I'm so happy that I didn't continue on with that job in that profession.
Yeah. Rob, did they make you not wear neckties and loose clothing? Because so many people get hurt in machine shops. I'm wondering how they dealt with that in your shop. I've never heard whether there were fixed rules or whether people just learned the hard way.
What they did was they made everybody that came in take their necktie and put it inside their shirt. You couldn't go out on the floor or work with any of the machines until you either took your necktie off or you tucked it into the between the first and second button of your shirt. And yeah, they frowned on loose clothing. Yep, I remember that. I learned a lot of good things doing that. I learned how to run all kinds of machines that was come in very handy later in life. So, I studied about 1.5 years, 2 years to be a tool maker. And the guy there was a Royal Machine Company in Warren, Rhode Island, and the guy that I worked for was named Niles Ellen. He was a brilliant man. He worked for Crown Fastenings for many, many years. And among some of the things that he invented, he did a lot of zippers inventions. And the zipper that you can, if it comes apart, you can put it back together again. He invented that particular zipper, and and one of the things they had me working on and sharpening was back then they had perforated holes for postage stamps, and they were the manufacturer for all the cast, the die that held all these pins to punch all those perforated holes in the postage sheets.
Hmm.
And then later on, when I showed a good aptitude for all this mechanical stuff, I worked up in the machine shop with Mr. Ellen, where I learned how to use all kinds of lathes and drill presses and milling machines and you name it. I learned how to use it. And,
Did you ever do any knurling? That always struck me
Yes.
as black magic.
no,
Amazing.
no, we used to know a lot of things. Yep.
How did you do it?
Basically, what you do is you have a device, a tool that has the knurl marks, and it was set on the carriage of a lathe, and then you would put the piece you want to knurl into the lathe, and you let it spin, and you just keep, cranking that die into it, and it would indent the. Of course, it can't be hard. You hardened it afterwards. It had to be mild steel.
I thought maybe it always had to be brass, but the
Nope.
idea of soft steel hadn't even occurred to me. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. And then they would used to do a lot with knurling stainless steel, because stainless steel is kind of soft, and used to do a lot of that too. Used to make knurled nuts, thousands of them. The heads would be knurled, so you could. Yeah. They did a lot of that stuff. It was very interesting.
No.
So before we get off the topic, do any of you guys own an AC Gilbert or Tusker radio?
Not today.
No.
No, actually not.
I own a couple of Tusca 225s.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess neither one are very common, but I just and a lot of things ended up being regional. So if things were made on the East Coast, they tended to be more plentiful on the East Coast, just like things that were built in Chicago tend to be more plentiful here than anywhere else.
Didn't
Yeah,
Tusker
I was
die?
attracted to them because they had been made in Hartford, and I grew up and lived in Connecticut and worked in Hartford for years. And as a matter of fact, I've never restored them. One, the insides are good, and the outside's not so good. The other, is just the opposite. So I'm going to package them up and throw them on one of the bulletin boards. Move on.
Didn't Tusker himself die fairly young?
I
No.
don't have that information.
No, he did not. You're thinking of the gentleman who was, I think he was secretary, and he was working on early TV, and he had a pair of headphones on and grabbed B+.
Yes, that's it. Yep. I
Up in
remember.
Manchester, Connecticut. No, Tuska lived pretty good life.
Okay.
Well, Tom, that was a great talk on Gilbert. It's a fascinating company. Do you happen to know anything about what they did during World War II? During World War II, Lionel ended up making a number of things for the military, including compass binnacles and telegraph keys.
Telegraph keys. Yep.
Yeah, the telegraph keys you find all over the place that say Lionel on them. Yep. I think I read something, but it's not off the top of my head. I apologize. I know there is a story about, and I think it was World War I, where AC testified before Congress because they wanted him to stop making erector sets to save metal, and he went in and gave all of the congressmen an erector set and started talking to them, and he pointed out that you're going to need engineers after the war is over. And these guys, which was supposed to be a fairly short talk, I think spent like half a day, and they're all sitting there building the erector set, and they approved him to keep making them. So,
Is the company still in business?
No. Lionel owns the American Flyer train brand, and they still make S-gauge trains, which a lot of you may have grown up with. AC Gilbert actually bought the American Flyer company because it was a Chicago company originally. And they were competing head to head with Lionel. And some of their stuff was better quality than Lionel, but they just didn't have the traction Lionel had. No pun intended. So AC bought him, kept making some of those products. He invented S-Gauge and was very successful with that. And Lionel still makes S-Gauge products that are branded American Flyer.
Yep.
So there are other products, the erector sets. It's a real interesting convoluted story, but early on, if you're all familiar with Meccano, which is the equivalent product out of England, Meccano was distributed in the US by, I think, a Meccano America kind of a subsidiary. And AC Gilbert actually bought the Meccano subsidiary. And you can see in ads in magazines where he's got a Meccano ad right next to an erector set ad. He was working both sides of the street. And, but as you know, in the early 60s is when the Gilbert company fell apart. And multiple people owned the erector brand name. I think Ideal Toy at one point had them. Now the company that owns them, if you go into a toy store, you will find products branded Meccano Erector. And the other thing that's interesting with erector sets in general is there's generations of them. They change the design of the girders and so on a few times. So the stuff that's being made now is quite different than the stuff we grew up with. And that doesn't make it a good or a bad, it just makes it different. Because early on, the really early stuff Erector made, it's really hard to make that work seamlessly with the stuff that was more popular that started up in the probably in the late 20s up through the 60s. So you kind of have to stay in the genre. It's almost like if you have kids or grandkids that have Legos, you can't hook them together with Connects. You know, it just doesn't work. And or back in our day, Tinker Toys, Lincoln Logs, and erector sets were hard to merge. So anyway, it's pretty interesting. But that's a whole rat hole you can go down on erector sets, and the AC Gilbert Heritage Society is really big on the erector set. They've actually published a few books that are refinements of previous books that go through every set, how it's configured. The specialty ones they sold to like Montgomery Ward and Sears. It just goes on and on and on. But that's where the bread and butter was.
There are a few erector set collectors, and I'm sure you've all been in a house or two where the guy has just collected so much that it's gradually forced him out of his bedroom. And one of the collectors was in Connecticut that I met, and he invited me into his house. And as you walk in, there was an absolutely immense erector set Ferris wheel in his kitchen. And he then said, why don't I show you my collection of erector sets? And we walked through the house, and every room had boxed erector sets right up to the ceiling. And the basement, he said, come down to the basement. I've got some really old ones down here. And he had boxed erector sets in the basement. And then he said, you know, I had gone over to look at a scientific instrument. He said, you might be interested in my garage. You guessed it. Boxed erector sets up as high as you could reach in all parts of his garage. It was just amazing. So like many of us, we get obsessed with something and start collecting too many of them. Well, he was over the top.
Yeah, maybe it's a good thing radio guys never have this problem.
Yeah. Anybody know this guy was in Connecticut? He was a famous radio and erector set collector, maybe 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'm fairly new to the club. The big collector in our area was a guy named John Drury, and he was an anchorman for one of the local TV shows for the news. You know, very well-known guy, and he had built a room above his garage. That was his erector set room, and he had some things that, you know, there's only one or two things known of. So when they had the auction when he passed away, it was quite the event. So yeah, but he was, when I've gone to a few people that have collections like you're talking about, and the whole idea is they want it pristine with all the parts and all the little cardboard pieces and all the little clips that held it in, all the things that would never happen once you played with it for the first time.
That's right.
From my viewpoint, I like building stuff. So I've built a few things and I just buy odd parts and my dad collected toy trains. So when you collect toy trains, you end up with erector sets as well. And he had his from when he was a kid and so on and so on. So I am not anywhere near that severe, but yes, I have more than the average person should have. But none of mine are pristine sets. They're all,
Well,
in fact, what I did is I stole an idea from another fellow where I got a multi-drawer tool cabinet like you would have bought from Sears and now you buy from Harbor Freight. And I bought the base cabinet and I've got all my parts divided up in the drawers of the base cabinet, and all those metal boxes are stacked elsewhere. Because rummaging through those metal boxes when you have more than 2 or 3 to get what you need, all you're doing is opening up metal boxes and looking for stuff. So now I just go through drawers. And in the genre of the stuff we all played with, the early stuff is nickel plated, the later stuff is tin plated. And when you build things, you try not to mix the two because the color looks funky. Because the nickel has this rich kind of gold tone to it, and the tin, of course, looks like tin plating, like, you know, like a solder joint. So, but I have found that the tin plated stuff holds up a whole lot better than the nickel plated stuff does. The nickel plated stuff tends to corrode a lot easier. More than you want to know about erector sets.
No, that's like you said, Tom, that's actually its own topic in and itself, because, for most of us, we have interests that go beyond just radios, and there's sort of that overlap. That's what we talk about. We end up talking about having like these conversations amongst ourselves, whether it's erector sets, train sets do come up from time to time, certainly cars, so no problem there. If it's old, we're generally interested in it.
Well, we all grew up in a time where you had to work and fix things, and so electrical and mechanical things, no matter what they are, of interest.
Yeah.
You'll find a lot of people that are into these things are also into clocks and all kinds of stuff. So it's all kind of related.
Yeah, and building anything with an erector set was an education of your muscles, your hands, your thinking. It was fabulous.
Yeah, and the problem is an adult doing it, your fingers are awfully big compared to those little 832 nuts.
Yeah.
And the other thing is it takes an immense amount of time to build anything on an erector set. It was a great tool for parents to keep their sons busy and occupied.
There's a challenge for you, Tom. We ought to stick one out there to build an Enigma replica out of an erector set.
Well, what's interesting, if you guys are familiar with the Babbage difference engine, do you know what that is?
Yeah.
There's a guy named Charles Babbage that wanted to make a calculating machine that wouldn't make any errors back in the early 1800s. And he built a portion of one, but never got fully funded to build the whole thing. And it is really interesting. So if you guys get a chance, you can see one demonstrated. They've actually built 2 of them. There's one in England and there's one in California. And these things are, they're probably the length of a compact car, at least 6 feet tall and 3 feet deep, and they measure the weight of it in tons because it's a big piece of machinery. And someone built a Babbage difference engine out of Meccano. It's on YouTube. So
they were analog computers, were they not?
I'm sorry?
They were analog computers.
They were kind of digital computers because they were made for calculating mathematic tables and printing them out.
Yeah.
So, but it was one of these things where you preset a set of factors, and then the number of times you cranked the machine determined how many times you were indexing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it was made so that if it had an error, it would lock up. The biggest problem with these things that were designed before then is any vibration that came through the building, like from a horse and wagon going by or whatever, stuff would bounce around, the thing would screw up and it'd give you a wrong number. And Babbage's whole deal is he wanted no errors because he had all these tables in mathematic books that people had manually calculated and there were errors in it. And it really drove him right up the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And, the British government actually financed him. So they ended up owning everything. So they have all the original drawings and they have the model that Babbage made, which is why they were able to, I don't know, a decade or so ago, make the original machine that never got built. So it's really, really interesting. But I'm taking you down a rabbit hole.
It's on display in the Science Museum in London. It's really quite fascinating.
Yes, and the other one was on display in the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, California for a number of years, and they would demo it every day. Whereas the one in England, as you know, because I saw that one as well, is static under glass. It's really wild to watch. So if you Google it and watch the video is just fascinating. And just, yeah, talk about something that's completely over the top as far as a mechanical device goes.
Those of you who had erector sets, just some neurons of connecting in my head. Do you remember the little electronic, AC powered electronic geared down drive motor? I recall it being in like a sky blue case, and I had made a crane out of my erector set where the drive motor would raise and lower a cable, and I had that sitting on my Lionel 027 gauge, very large train layout. And it just popped into my mind that I apparently integrated Lionel and AC Gilbert. I probably caused some friction there, but
well, a lot of people did, especially making things that were a little more static, like bridges. My brother's involved with one of these modular train groups, you know, where they make a standardized module and they set up at a library or they set up at a school. And the gate that you use to walk in, so you lift up a set of tracks so you can walk into the middle of the loop, is all made out of a erector set on a piece of wood. And so it's still happening.
Well,
was there another company besides Gilbert that made a chemistry set that folded out a metal multi-fold box, or is this a false memory that I have?
I'm pretty sure there was.
I don't know why I have this in my mind that I might have not had a Gilbert one, but in any event.
I want to tell you that there was probably 2 or 3 companies that were doing that because they were pretty popular.
Skillcraft, maybe? Skill, something like that?
Yeah, Skill something, because it seems like that's what I had when I was a kid. They were little square bottles. But I can't, the name of the company's not coming to me.
Back on the chemistry story, I used to forge notes from my mother to the pharmacist so I could buy saltpeter. My friends and I, we found some chemical supply house in Missouri or something would sell us anything. We're ordering gallons of nitric acid, sulfuric acid, mercury compounds, but it was the magnesium dust and the potassium chlorate. That was the explosive. So,
yeah, I had mentioned earlier, maybe Hugh, when you were out of the room, that I would say around 1960 or so, I was just able to, I can picture the pharmacy. It's this big, huge pharmacy, and I'd walk in there and get, you know, a jar of potassium nitrate, you know, a pound and a half, 2 pounds for $2, no questions asked for a 12 or 13-year-old, and sulfur. And they didn't have powdered charcoal, but it's pretty easy to make your own. And
yeah, we always had a double of a time making that stuff blow up. That magnesium dust and potassium chlorate, that was the stuff. Perfect mushroom clouds, 4 feet high. They were great.
If you dig hunt around a little bit, there's a book out there called, I think it was The Radioactive Boy Scout. It was about this Boy Scout who basically set up a little nuclear experimentation lab in the garden house behind his family house. And they treated it, once the government found out what was going on, they treated it with considerable respect as had radioactive.
Wonder if he earned a merit badge for that.
Is it the mushroom cloud badge or?
I read that. That was pretty interesting. He actually, supposedly in the book, got a reaction to go, you know, kind of critical with beryllium to slow down the neutrons and all kinds of good stuff. Who knows?
Well, I guess we should change our name to the New England Vintage Explosives Club.
Yeah.
I had this habit. You know, you're all over the map, and I'm sure everybody has another hobby they could throw into this conversation that's off topic. I was one who used to build, I think the company was called Guillo's, the balsa wood and paper airplanes.
Oh, sure.
And I would spend, you know, 2, 3, 4 weeks building these beautiful airplanes, and I was always very meticulous about them. And then I would glue ash cans to the bottoms of both wings, light it, and throw it out my bedroom window. And there was no debris of any magnitude to leave any trace evidence. And then I would start again and build another. And I actually have a couple of those kits left over from the 60s that have never even been opened. Never
Oh,
did it with
that's great, Bob. Bring them to Vermont. We'll have a great time.
I never did it with plastic models. I had some sense that, you know, I would end up taking a shard of plastic out of my eye, but yeah, balsa wood was great to blow up.
I used to make model airplanes, you know, from scratch, and I mean, you would go through a labor of weeks just making this thing and getting it all just right, and you would take it out, and the first day you'd fly it, it would go along and crash and break into 100 pieces. And I think we learned some lessons on that stuff in those days, because I don't know,
Wow.
when things break, I don't get excited anymore.
I have to admit, Rob, that I'm in awe just hearing somebody making something of that nature from scratch. I always found it challenging to make balsa kits, because the instructions were pretty good, but there was always a little bit of a gap between what they led you to do and what you needed to do to complete it. And so somebody who's starting out with some basic wood and glue, you have my admiration.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I had an aptitude for looking at something and then actually sit down and make a model of it. And I don't know where that came from. Maybe, I don't know, who knows, but I was fairly good at that, at making models of things that, you know, you see a full-size one, and then I would be able to make a model of it and get it to work. And
when I was a kid, I remember my dad having an old piece of balsa wood, about, I'd say, 2 feet long and about 4 inches by 6 inches. And he explained to me that when he was a kid, which would have been in the 20s and 30s, he wanted to make airplanes, but he couldn't afford to buy pre-cut balsa. So he would buy this hunk of balsa and cut it. And I just, as a kid, I thought, oh my God, it seemed like an awful job, but that's stuck around for years.
So those of you who are relating construction and model and flight to explosives, I can't imagine that the bulk of you haven't had your share of model rocketry, the old Estes rockets. I used to do that all the time too. I still have all of my model rockets. It's unbelievable.
I transferred my interest in model rockets onto my son Garen, and we used to go out and shoot these things off, and oh my God, and run all over the countryside trying to find them afterwards.
There was you're familiar with the sort of standardization that Estes rocketry came up with the ABCD nomenclature for engines, but they were all the same physical size. But there was a D-size engine that was probably, I would say, 6 times the internal volume of propellant.
Yeah.
And I remember building one with my best friend. It was probably, kid height. I would say it was probably 2.5 feet. And we launched it from an elementary school playground. And it's incredible. We actually lost sight of it. We never knew where it came down. So somewhere in the mid-60s, in some backyard in eastern Westchester County, Somebody found a rocket hanging in a tree with an odd colored parachute.
Mhm.
Oh, maybe it's right next to the model airplane that went out of range of the transmitter and just kept flying.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It had my name and address on it, but I never heard about it.
I remember when I was growing up, we were out down by the seashore, and I think I was clamming with my father. And we heard this noise and we didn't know what it was. So we were looking around, and then there above us, about 100, 200 feet, was this model airplane that was just flying down the coast. Just evidently, I don't know how far it got or how long it flew, but it just disappeared.
What year was that?
Oh, I don't know, probably 1950s. Yeah.
Yeah, my thrill was trying to use model rockets to take aerial photographs. And I was able to construct a little camera, again, with a friend of mine who, let's just say, he excelled on every intellectual scale. He ended up going to MIT, as a matter of fact. And we made a centrifugal shutter camera that would, when it went over its apogee and came back around, the shutter would spin around one time, and it actually worked. It was unbelievable. A little lens out of some kind of plastic one-use camera. Remember those that they had back in the
Oh, yeah.
day?
Yep.
And even with the picture, it was a little, we had to cut out in the darkroom a circle of negative film and insert it and so forth.
Yeah.
It wasn't, the pictures were not that particularly exciting from 300
No.
feet or 400 feet, but
Of
it
course,
was
the
clever.
stuff they do today with drones is unbelievable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jeez.
yeah, absolutely. But
Well, I don't know where it is with you, but in New York State now, you can no longer fly a drone without a license. You have to
Well,
get, it depends on the size and the weight. So there's a class of very tiny drones, the kind that are given as holiday gifts and so forth,
Yeah.
that are still acceptable, but it's anything over, I don't know what the weight and size is. You have to be licensed, and they have to know exactly where you are related to air travel. So if you're in and
well,
around an airport.
I live right under the flight path, the Green Airport, so I don't think I'd be able to do anything with drones
Yeah.
around here.
Yeah, and I can see Schenectady County Airport outside my window here, so it's
Yeah.
about 3 miles away. So I'm sure that wouldn't be allowed. But
Oh, as I recall, I got stuck at Schenectady Airport in my airplane one time. They had an immense fireworks display one time there, and they wouldn't let me off until the next day. Were you involved in that one, Bob?
yeah, it was nearby. It wasn't on the airport grounds, but it was nearby, that at a facility that overlooks the airport, right on the other side of the Mohawk River. And yeah, it was probably me that did that display. Because we had to get, as you might imagine, a lot of clearance for fireworks, being near an airport as well. But the Schenectady County Airport is primarily private aircraft, such as you flew, Tom, and it's also the home of the New York 109th Airborne Division of the Air National Guard. That's the group that basically supplies all the Antarctic missions. So we have all these planes here in Schenectady that have skis on them.
oh, that's funny.
Yeah, they're what's KC-35 is the tanker version, but you probably all know it. I can't remember the nomenclature of the plane, but it's that workhorse 4-engine transport vehicle.
C-130?
C-130. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. So these are all variations of C-130s.
right.
And they even used them here. We used to have a massive air show at this airport that Tom was referring to. We haven't had it in many years. We would always be first to get the Blue Angels and the Canadian Air Force One. I can't remember the name of them.
Snowbirds?
And Yeah, yeah. And then that became near impossible. You had to book 10 years in advance. So we shut down the show. But one of the demonstrations we had was a KC, this KC-35 tanker version of the C-130 that what was able to get off the runway in 300 feet. And they did this with 8 JATO bottles.
Oh, sure.
Jeez, yeah.
4 on each side, and it was the most awe-inspiring thing you'd ever seen. In my case, a negative way, because this thing would go lumbering down the runway. I couldn't have been more than 120 miles per hour, and these 4 jetpacks on each side, which the fuel burn in this bright red, would ignite. And this aircraft would lift off the ground without exaggeration at a 45 to 50 degree angle. And then they would all go out in about, I don't know, 5 seconds. And the plane is now 1,000 feet in the air, but it's near vertical. And everybody there thinks it's just going to stall and fall out of the sky. And the plane lumbers over from 45 degrees down to 90 and revs its engines and just takes off. And they did this demo twice a day for 4 days, and then they discovered at $10,000 a bottle that the U.S. government was not going to pay for it anymore. But that was a union of propulsion, explosive components, energetic materials, and air flight that was different than rocketry. That was, I mean, it was a highlight of this, and there were 50,000 people at this air show every day.
Didn't someone try strapping a JATO bottle on a vehicle out on the salt flats?
Oh, they've done, yeah, they've done that.
I can't tell if that was actual an old wives' tale, or was that really, you know?
No, I
the truth?
think I saw a program on that one time on
Oh, really?
Discovery Channel.
I'm not sure about.
I'm not sure about just attaching a JATO bottle, but they have many jet-designed tired vehicles, you know, terrestrial vehicles that have competed out there. And I believe, you know, one of the famous names in racing, I'm not into racing, but I've seen television shows, exceeded 330 miles an hour in a quarter mile or something of that nature. But it was a jet engine. I mean, he just went out and bought a surplus jet engine. And there's even one on a motorcycle.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too, but I didn't think anybody would believe me.
Yeah, the guy. Oh, I can picture the guy.
That's a famous picture. Yeah.
The name of the fellow slips my mind, but he's so famous. He's passed away in the last 5 years, but he was famous for just having no holds barred when it came to 2 wheels. You know, he built a motorcycle around a 427 Chevy engine and raced it. You know, and each cylinder had its own carburetor. So there was 8 carburetors, and you could almost not get on it because it was so loud. And
oh yeah, they're crazy.
And he couldn't afford. You know, there was very little you could do with noise suppression on a vehicle like that. That's, you know, revving at 5,000, 6,000 RPM. But anyway.
Didn't Evel Knievel strap some kind of jet on him as he went over that canyon or something?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, he did, and then didn't quite work out.
Yeah.
Well, I remember there was an email that went around. This was probably in the 80s or 90s about someone slapping a JATO on a Chevy Impala, you know, and the Bonnie Flats. Hey, Tom, thank you. You know, thanks for Tom for doing it. He's dropping off. Great to have you. It looks like that presentation started up all sorts of directions here.
Well, it's good. The point of these things is to get conversation going and people learning things. So it served its purpose.
It was great. We really appreciate you attending, Tom. And if you would like to show up anytime, I will happily invite you. You can come and go as you choose in the future.
All right, I'd be happy to. If you don't mind, I just have something else I've got to do, because we're, to borrow the phrase from somebody early on, we're going to go visit our grandchild tomorrow. So we have to drive to Indiana. So
Well, Tom, thank you
One
again.
quick question for you, Tom. Are you related in any way to the Kleinschmidt of Kleinschmidt teleprinters?
I am my great grandfather.
Oh,
Oh, my God.
wonderful.
So
Oh,
the
my
fun
heavens.
fact
Wow.
before I go is they were machining magnesium, because if you haven't know anything about the early Kleinschmidt machines, they had a lot of magnesium. And
Yeah,
they had a
they're also-
magnesium fire on a lathe, and it burned a hole through the roof of the building.
Oh,
And shortly after they had the newsletter that showed the hole in the roof of the building, they showed their new safety program with buckets of sand at every machine, and that they had joined with Alice Chalmers next door to create a industrial fire department to get started on a fire before the fire department got there, because they were in Deerfield, Illinois, which was quasi-rural back in 1950s, and it had probably a volunteer fire department. So they were showing pictures of them practicing putting out fires after that as well.
the only
There-
thing I remember about Kleinschmidt's is that after spending about 6 to 8 hours with one of those things in a room, or several of them in a room, afterwards, you couldn't hear anything for a couple of days.
Well,
Yeah, and that
probably
would be true of all those machines. Well, gents, I'm sorry, I got a dash, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you,
All right.
Tom.
Safe
Bye-bye.
travels. Bye-bye.
Well,
Wow.
well,
that was very good.
there's another topic presentation for you, John.
And what, the printers?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Kleinschmidt and
Yeah.
Teletype Corporation were I think the two biggies.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of people I'm sure on here. Tom and I have a passion for teletype equipment.
That would be great if you guys are up for it. We would absolutely enjoy a presentation on that.
I just met the guy at the Antique Wireless Association who is in charge of all of their teletype systems, and they have the world's biggest museum of teletype machines right now. They have machines, something like 16 or 18 working machines. And Bob, I'll update you on this since I know you're really into teletype, but he was interested in a teletype machine that I had about 1959 or so, something called a Mite. And they have two of them. So it's an amazing thing.
Where's this located?
You wouldn't think of the AWA in near Rochester, New York,
Okay.
with that big a collection, but they have a big collection of everything. They've just put in a new ham shack that is going to have a complete ham station from every 10 years of ham radio, working back to the very beginning. And they're all going to be working. They put up antennas for each of these. So you can go in and say, well, I want to be work a 1930s ham station now, and you go in and operate that. Amazing.
Yeah, I'd love to get that contact information because I'm in the senior age group, even though I'm not visible on your screen. And I'm trying to move forward a lot of things I've collected. So I have a lot of teletype equipment, and despite Tom being on my case for 5 years now to get that stuff operational, I'm not sure I have the time or patience to do it.
We are going to do that at the Schenectady Ham Fest before you
listen to you. Anyway, I'm not a member of a lot of different clubs or organizations, but I would love to find ways to move some stuff forward. So I have some old vintage ham equipment, and I have a very large collection of vintage test equipment. That's all the test devices are all in these very high quality hardwood cases with leather handles. And I may have, 50, 60, 70 of them that go back to the Edison years. And I would love to find somebody or some place to move them forward. So maybe if there's a reference within your club, that might be helpful. I've tried our local museum and they simply don't have the space. They have the interest, but they don't have the space.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem, is space.
Yeah, yeah.
These
I wanted to say to Bob that I send out notices to our club members. Very often I get requests from people who are rehoming, and my dad died. I want to sell my radio. So about in the last month, I've probably done 4 of those. So if you contact me and want me to send out a notice, I do that on Constant Contact with a picture and just a name of the item. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, could you put your contact info in the chat to
I'll
me?
put it in the chat right now. Yeah.
Thank you, Bob. That's very kind of you. I
And
just, I have this nightmare of a dumpster rolling up to my house, after I'm gone, and my, I mean, my children understand the stuff I have, but the story. Everybody's got their own version of the story, so I just can't. I don't know. Maybe it is okay for the stuff just to end up in a dump, but I think somebody will enjoy it.
I keep offering Bob to take it in my big trailer to the Deerfield Ham Fest, but I have a nightmare of coming back with my big trailer still full of it and saying, "Hey, Bob, I've got a problem here." Or maybe I'll just take it up to my farm and bury it with a backhoe, and then
There you go.
nobody
There you
will
go.
know.
Hey, Bob, you ever wanted to take photos and do a photos show for us? We'd certainly be interested.
Well, I don't know it's worthy of a show, John, but taking photos is absolutely a critical step. I have them stacked up on a pallet in my garage. And so it's, I live in upstate New York, so it's a little cold, but one of the irony is that it's sitting right next to a vintage BMW motorcycle, which I'm also trying to sell. So what I need to do is find a day, take them, just say I'm going to spend the entire day doing this, and take them all out and put them on a tarp in my driveway one at a time and photograph them. And then when someone like Bob H. or you or anybody else says, "Hey, well, what do you got?" I can at least represent it accurately instead of some generic comment like I've already made. And then people can judge for themselves. And I know I could get like $50 a piece on eBay, but who has the patience for that?
Right.
It's not the selling, it's the packaging and the shipping and
right.
Well, not only that, but a lot of stuff today, has people on eBay have shown no interest in many things. I put some stuff on and had it down to $1 and nobody was interested.
Yeah. It could be that there's some saturation phenomena going on sort of turn of the century everything. I think people in the antique business also discover that. And now instead of selling things as a value as an antique, they're looking at it from the standpoint of a functionless statement piece, like an item that 10 years ago was really cool to get working. Now they just want to hang it on their wall. If any of you follow American Pickers, you probably see the change that Mike Wolf has gone through with that phenomena. He used to buy things for whatever, pick an item for $1,000 because people wanted to repurpose it. Now what they want to do is they just want to decorate with it. And so it brings a whole different and lower value to it.
It's rather interesting, Bob. I go to flea markets and I put $1 for anything on my table and free after 10 o'clock in the morning. And I end up with a lot of stuff left over. Whereas at NEVAC, you put stuff on the free table, it doesn't matter what it is, it's gone. I can't understand it.
That's our most popular event on our shows is the free table.
Yeah.
We're kind of lucky here in New Jersey. We have a relatively new couple of guys that start up an auction business, and they're primarily they're doing house clean outs and things like that, but their primary thing is vintage electronics. And whenever they do have an auction, I kind of help them out. Me and a couple other people, my wife helps count money, and I kind of run around and pick stuff out and help people out. And it's a lot of fun, and it's an unfortunate thing because we all have our own collections. We all have things, but what are you going to do with them? I mean, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, my wife will probably call these guys up and move everything through there, and it's just unfortunate fact of life, and that's just one of those things. But we have a place to move them, and it's like anything else, whatever the market's gonna demand, whatever it is that you have. So just keep that in mind. But we're lucky. I mean, we have that here. So
You made a comment that I think is highly relevant, and I fortunately did not discover it the hard way, but I live alone and so forth. Having garage sales, auctions, whatever, is very, very challenging to do with one person.
Yeah.
So when you have a partner or spouse or a friend or a colleague who's working with you with the simple things like just spelling you for an hour or watching your money box while you're chatting with somebody about an item, or even in the hopefully they're rare worst cases where an intentional distraction comes your way and another person, a confederate, rids you of something.
Yeah.
And so I even think about other things that are not niche-y, like the things that all of you are interested in at the end of my driveway. And I just chicken out when it comes to, I mean, just the idea of putting them out. On Saturdays in my community, people are out at 6 a.m. You can put up a sign that has 10-foot high letters that said absolutely no buyers before 9, and they'll be there at 6. And so what do? You put stuff out, and then you have to go back into your home or wherever and get more stuff and put it out. And every time you do that, you inject a risk factor. And it's not that I'm distrustful. It's just that I guess I'm distrustful. Okay, well, whatever. So
it's something more than that, Bob, because I've offered to come down to help you and you still haven't done it yet.
Well, that's because over the last couple of years, I've defied my own objectives, and I've actually I found some places that do really good recycling. So I actually have gotten rid of a lot of stuff.
Years ago, I mean, when I was selling a lot of tubes at, Hamfest, one of the things that, I mean, I have these boxes of tubes today, and, and I'm opening them up and looking at them, and some of them say 12AX7, but in that box is a 6BQ7. And then I realized that what used to happen in those days was there would be a guy, he would come up and he'd be looking at tubes, and he'd be picking a different box, and somebody in behind him would call him, and he would turn around to address that guy. And in the meantime, while he was doing that, he would switch to 6BQ7 for the 12AX7, and then turn around and close the cover on the box and put it back. And this went on quite a few times that I got wise to it after a while, but it was just one of those things you deal with.
Rob, was the rationale behind that one tube is valued at a lot more than the other?
Yeah, some of these tubes happen to be, some really good, 12AX7s or 6DJ8s or something, or some tube that was, it was probably a $40, $50 tube.
I see.
If I could jump up and hello.
Yeah. Hey, Brad.
I have the same problem. This is Brad. I have the same problem as to what do I do with my test instruments here? And I think what I'm going to try a couple of things. One is contacting the local vocational high school, which has some electronics programs, and see if they're interested.
Or they could put up a display of vintage electronic test equipment.
Yeah, I would give the things away, but although I kind of hate to see a kid with a pair of side cutters going through the 547.
No, you can stipulate what you want to do with them.
Exactly.
I know I've even been into some, companies now where you walk in the lobby, and in the lobby is, a vintage form of, really, really old stuff. Some of them before the turn of the century, and then right through the turn of the century in the early 1900s and what have you, of various tools that they manufacture, but these tools, they have them all on display in nice cases and everything else. And it's kind of cool.
My plan B is to see if I can contact any like an HP or Tektronix collector group. I think they've got to be out, maybe not.
Yeah.
Brad, I had success doing what you just described, but with internal combustion engines. I made a call to the local high school which is just a mile from my house. And the fellow who teaches various shop classes came over and he took working and non-working motors. You know, I said, the deal is you got to take everything and not, you can extract the motors after you remove them from my property. And that worked well. And he said, he told me a year later that these young men and women in high school were able to learn and rebuild several of the engines and apply them to various things. So that's a really positive thing to do. The only thing better of moving this kind of stuff forward is moving it forward to young people.
Yep.
That I think is the greatest gratification and the greatest value. And my observation from a ham radio point of view, after virtually not only no interest but negative interest in techie type things, is that I'm seeing, at least at the middle school level, a resurgence of interest from boys and girls in the kinds of things that all of you are interested in. So whether it's true or not, I can't tell, but
time will only tell you. Time,
yeah,
just
maybe a new cycle in you know, that brings back those of us who grew up in the 50s and 60s. Maybe something will happen in the 2020s and 30s.
Yep, maybe.
I know that one of the things they've done at the Steam and Wireless Museum is that they have now opened it up to having schools come in and do tours. They have, you know, bring in a, you know, high school class or middle school class, and they give them a tour of the museum. They've been doing a lot of that lately, and there's been a lot of interest in doing that. A lot of things, these people just, a lot of kids don't even know a lot of this stuff exists today. They honest and truly don't. It's amazing. I know that the first time that my son came down to my workshop, my youngest son, and he was maybe 10 years old, and I had a power supply running that was powering a Hamilton Super Pro, and you know, it had the great big rectifier there. And of course, he'd never seen one before. And he reached up and said, "Oh, what's that?" And before I could tell him, "Don't touch it," he put his hand on it and he said, "Wow, that's hot." And I said, "Yeah, that's the way those things were in those days. They were hot." And
I just share a little anecdote with you. For most of my life, I've been going around the country giving a major presentation on a very controversial topic. And I'd started doing it in the 70s and then didn't do it for a period of time. There was some local interest from a local high school of the kids seeing the content of this presentation. This was about 10 years ago. And so we arranged for this whole thing. It was a whole day event. And I went in and I gave this presentation, and the vintage of this presentation again was 1970. So as you know, even the concept of home computing didn't exist until 1980.
That's right.
And the idea of a graphical interface was years and years after that. You remember, everything was 80 characters by whatever, 24 lines.
Yeah.
And so my whole presentation was all 35 millimeter slides and 16 millimeter film. At the end of the presentation, the advanced placement history professor asked the kids to put their questions on paper and submit them to me. And you know what the most common question was? What are slides and film?
Yep.
They had never even knew it existed, let alone hadn't seen it before.
Yep. Yep.
And the irony was that the adult person said, maybe you want to consider changing this all to PowerPoint. And I actually did look into it and determined it would take about a year and cost tens of thousands of dollars. But I said, now that I've gotten this message, I'm potentially doing this all-day presentation again in April, and I'm still going to do it with film and slide. And the rationale for that is that I want not only the message of the content, but the message of the vehicle that I used back in the 70s to convey information just as an object lesson. I'm not trying to convince anybody it was bad or good, but I'm just saying that
20 years from now, things that people take for granted, like their cell phone and their very fast computer and whatever, will be in another format. Who knows what it'll be?
Yep.
Right.
And so it's sort of ironic that that exposing this to young people with the notion that I would update it backfired. And if anything, it committed me to retaining the old. In all fairness, it's now half in PowerPoint and half in film and slide, but the original film and slide stuff still the same as when I put it together in 1970. And I said, well, there's, I'm not judgmental of generations, but I said, boy, there's hope today for young people. And we've had a few young people come to our amateur radio field day events and so forth. So, and I'm not sure that it's STEM. I think it's just a cycle.
Yeah, well, you ask any teenager or 20-year-old today, do you know what an 8-track is, or what a cassette tape is? And most of them have no idea what you're talking about.
There was a question about 8-track recorders on Jeopardy, and all the players were in their 40s or 50s, and not one of them knew the answer.
That's funny.
So, yeah, I mean, granted, it's 3 random people out of a massive society, but none of them knew what an 8-track meant.
No idea at all.
But today's Jeopardy, or yesterday's, there was a picture of an item that was a Walkman, and somebody did get that one. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
So nostalgia is a great thing, and sometimes young people say, your children or your grandchildren say, you're just getting too buried in the past. But I think we use the past to build the future, and so I think everything, and I'm pontificating here, I apologize, guys, but I think everything sort of has got its place in moderation.
No, that brings a story to mind that I often tell people, in that amateur radio had a lot to do with the concept of cell phone technology, because after all, without repeaters and everything else. But I remember years ago working in the front yard, and there were these 2 women walking down the street, one on one side of the street, one on the other, who had just gotten their cell phones, and they were talking to one another
Across the street.
Myself, oh boy, this is not going to be good.
Yep. That is true.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Right.
Well, I think what you're going to do is what you're doing here, and I'm most flattered and thank John and all of you, for allowing, sort of outsiders to participate with you. My vehicle to your organization was through Tom Pereira, who I've known for a very long time. But you generated, you're probably from all different parts of the country, and you generated a camaraderie around a little passion that you have. And so that's the alternative for a cell phone, is you spend an hour and a half. Granted, it's Zoom, but it's a pretty close approximation. And I find it works well. Tom and I are involved, Tom's, extensive expertise in history with cryptology. And we have another one that we run, a meeting that we run globally. We had one on, when was it? It was Sunday. It was this past Sunday. And we had people doing this from all over the world. And that was across a wider age spectrum. What do you think, Tom? I think the bottom end there might be maybe Ryan, maybe 25 or 30. I don't think there are any young people, under college age, and it's just people getting together and meeting in different cultures.
That is particularly interesting, I think, is that there seems to be an absolute upper limit to the number of people we can convince to come to a meeting. It seems like 20 is really pushing it in virtually all cases, unless somebody extremely famous is speaking. And neither Bob nor I nor John, I think, or any of us can figure out why that is. We advertise these wonderful get-togethers at the NEVEC reflector and talk about it at the shows. And still there's this group of very happy people who show up every 2 weeks, but no more.
Yeah, we Tom and I have been commiserating on this matter for a while. We were doing better during the heart of the pandemic because
Yeah.
I don't know where your meeting came from it, but the meeting that
Yeah,
we
that's what
had,
we
which
did.
started in April 2020, you know, Tom told me they regularly met in Germany, this group of people, and that couldn't happen. And we kicked around ideas and came up. We're using WebEx instead of Zoom, but the phenomenon is the same.
Yeah.
And back in that 2020, 2021 period, we had maybe 35 or 40. And then about a year ago, it just topped out at 20. And what's interesting is that the email distribution list, which we don't have control over, is purported to have between 300 and 400 people that it gets addressed to.
And just another point, Bob, is that I'm a member of the LICW club with over 4,800 members, and we never get meetings over 20 people either. And every one of those members gets an announcement. And these are really, really fascinating meetings that we have, very interesting speakers, but it's not a not a matter of the size of the organization. It just seems to be, I can't even imagine what it is.
One of the things that we do that you're doing here, Bob, John rather, is we record our meetings with the permission of the presenter, and we've never been turned down yet. We had our 56th meeting on Sunday, and I think a lot of people just say, you know what, I'll just watch the recording in my time schedule. Yeah, and we get that. And I just can't bring myself to say, well, let's not record them to offer that option to force people to attend. I think that's a little disingenuous.
Yeah.
So we do what we do. I mean, we had an author that was a little off. He's a well-published author and one of the most awarded and brilliant people in his field of what's called software forensics. And he just wrote a book that's become a bestseller. And he wrote it on a topic, and we had the same 20 people come, and he was pretty good. You know, I mean, it was a potentially volatile topic because it was about U.S. politics, but in the end, it's just, you know, so I don't fret about it anymore. But we do have a financial model. You know, none of my business, but somebody's paying for the Zoom account you're using. Well, we have the same. We have the same thing going on in our group, and so there have been some generous donors, but the donors are less. I can already tell they've communicated with me. Frequent donors are less likely to contribute because they're not getting any benefit from it anymore.
Right.
And so,
well,
it's a crazy world, and you just learn to move with it. You know, ride the crest of the wave, not the trough. You know.
John, you've really held this together beautifully, and people have really loved coming to these meetings. Do you have any thoughts on? Well, I know we've discussed this.
Well, I mean, for me, you know, the way I've sort of looked at this is, you know, so far I've been able to keep 2 meetings a month. That's always the goal. So 24 times a year. And I'll keep doing it as long as, you know, people, you know, keep coming, which the way I've been trying to structure this is I try not to set up a very strict agenda, because I think part of the experience is that we're distributed in 6 states, you know, and there are people who are outside of it, like Greg and so forth, but we can't get together in a single spot. Now, like the California Historical Radio Society has their own building, so they can meet, you know, whenever they want to. So over here, if I have a topic, people participate. Sure, we might spin off in a few different directions here and there, but the point of it all is this turns into a hangout. And that's basically what it is twice a month. So people get to hang out. We have a topic. We're going to go through some photos. Somebody might do a presentation. You know, Tom, you've been great about giving presentations in the past. We've been all the richer in knowledge and have thoroughly enjoyed them. But, you know, everybody contributes in some way, even if it's commentary or experience. So at the end of the day, if people are comfortable doing that, why overly structure it? You know, and we have the usual 20, 25 people, but it's usually somewhere between the high teens, you're right. Bob is spot on. It's about hangs around about 20. We sort of reach a plateau, whereas I think the most we ever had is maybe when we have one of those Zoom fests where we had in the low 30s. But when I was talking to Tom earlier before the meeting started, he said I guess earlier he had people as much as 70 people, but that was a spike. That was the most he ever had, but I think it settles back down to the 30s. So they seem to have maybe a little bit better meeting attendance. But we look at it, for the $149 a year for our Zoom account, it's a member benefit that people get to voluntarily participate. There's no expectation about people having to present. They're willing to, they want to pipe in, they want to just sit and listen. That's perfectly fine. The more the merrier. And I try to make it. In fact, we've written articles to publish in Raven where we say, there's no pressure. It's not like you join Zoom and you're suddenly forced to present something. It's purely voluntary. If you want to show your collection, do whatever you want.
You know what's interesting, John? Just to juxtapose this,
Sure.
The Crypto Collectors Group, which we gave our own, we invented a name that Tom had encouraged us to do, and it's called the International Conference on Cryptologic History. It is an offshoot of a group that's a groups.io mailing list called Crypto Collectors, but there were such excellent presentations that to have crypto collectors in your CV didn't have as much of a ring to it. So we came up with this name. And the way that we have gone over the last 3 years is an inverse to what's happened with you. We try to get people to come together in a clubhouse format like you're doing, and they're just not interested. They show up for the formal hour and a half, 2-hour presentations, and often another hour to 2 hours of conversation afterwards, but nobody bites. If we have, just come and talk, kibitz about the machine you're working on or whatever. Yeah. So that's an interesting difference. Another thing is the phenomena of what I call meeting fatigue. You can call it Zoom fatigue, because a lot of people said, the running joke about the fact that they weren't wearing pants was a euphemism for not having to, prepare yourself as you would if you went out in a group situation. Sure. So who cares if you haven't showered for 3 days? But there's a fatigue phenomena that I think is taking place that I'm seeing in a college format that I'm involved with, where our membership is less than half of what it was pre-COVID. And then the third thing I just referred to, which is rearing its ugly head. And I'm only using this for statistics, not for any drama. But in the last week alone, I have a close friend who lives in New York City who contracted COVID at 77 years old, and she was out of commission for a month. I have another friend of mine who lives about 5 miles from here who got COVID last week, and he's only 61. And then I have a friend of a family who was perfectly healthy, got up one morning last Thursday, didn't feel well, and was dead by Friday. My whole point is, and we all know this, that the idea of a hybrid meeting to offer people alternatives to being together, even when they can be together, is still maybe the rule of law for congregating. Even my ham radio group, we run a hybrid meeting and people want to show up, but we always have a camera and microphone in the room. And so it's a very, very different world.
We are.
That is not as transient as I thought it might be. There's the post-pandemic world, so to speak, is not that dramatically different than the in-pandemic world.
Yep.
And who's getting richer? The stockholders of Cisco and Google Meet and Zoom communications and whatever.
Absolutely. No, it's here to stay. You're absolutely right, Bob. I hate to see it displace getting face to face, but there's, in our case, it's a sort of a practical nature. We've got hundreds of miles separating all of us, so that works. But it is a little sad if you're in a not too far away from each other and still have to rely on Zoom as your only way to see each other. But there may be a certain reality in it.
I just am so delighted. I mean, I would never wish a pandemic to get to this end, but Tom and the colleagues and friends that he's had over the years who meet in Southeast Germany yearly, ironically at a ham convention, but they have a crypto group. There are a large number of us who just don't have the wherewithal, or for whatever reasons cannot or would not travel there. So now being online, we too ran, in our heyday, we're running 24 meetings a year. And I can't even put my head around the joy that I have at least gleaned from meeting all of these people, albeit online. And Tom would introduce me to another person and another person and another person. And it's just been an extraordinary world shrinking opportunity for me. And even like we have a close colleague, you'll get it when I tell you, but he lives in Israel. And, as soon as things started happening several months ago, we were reaching out to him and couldn't find him, whatever. And he was on this past Sunday and we were delighted to see him and so forth. So, Tom, the people from all over the world, we have Australia, certainly the UK, a lot in Germany, Denmark, Belgium, many in the US, but all over the country. One of our closest colleagues lives in the San Francisco Valley.
It's very hard to put together an overview of this and see where we're going. Somehow NEVAC has a magic formula and has really brought people to shows and to these Zoom meets beautifully, and other places just have failed miserably.
Yeah, and sure, I think it's some certain amount of it could be a set of personalities. It could be it's hard to sort of put a finger on it. But the thing is, I guess I should probably give back people's evenings, the rest of their evenings. But as to summarize, we really, these Zoom meetings are really fun and they're really worthwhile going. And there's no pressure to do anything other than show up. That's the best thing of that.
And you clearly all enjoy each other's company. So that's also, it may be behind the scenes, people are disagreeing on all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, when you're together, it's, I'm saying it as an outsider, it is so obvious.
Well, it's sort of interesting because each of us can learn from another person in this group. Right. And happily, we're all really open to learning, not just spouting off what we have to say, but we listen. Yeah. And Robert, for instance, you're just a wealth of information. Amazing, just amazing. And all of you are. And I just love it.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of great expertise. I look around this virtual room here, and you can pick out everyone's certain expertise, and they bring a lot to that individual table. So that's what's really has made it a lot of fun. We have a lot of varied expertise, but they can bring it in, and hey, there's lots of people who don't go to these Zoom meetings who have really some great expertise. It's just we're all the poorer for it because we really like them to show up, But anyway, I'm hoping that these people actually listen to this recording if they make it to this end and actually take something from this, and say,
oh, hey. I forgot about that. John, would you do me a favor? Could you edit out all my comments, please?
But
I have several people that I've sent your presentation, your follow-up where you can view it. And one of my friends is in Maine and another one is local here. And if I forget every while and then they ask me, they say, hey, when is the next NEVIC presentation going to be? And I say, no, we haven't had one yet. Oh, I was wondering because I hope you hadn't forgotten to send it to me.
There we go. I know. I've actually, you know what? As maybe my final note, I should actually end the meeting soon. Is I got to run anyway. Is the best compliment I can ever get is when someone says, "Hey, if I have to put a 3-week span between meetings because I'm trying to keep it at 2 a month." You say, "Isn't there a meeting this week?" I said, "No, but it's 1 more week." So that's the best compliment I can take.
A quick administrative question for you, sure. John. What is if you care to share, what is your rationale for holding off sending the actual Zoom meeting link to a half hour before the meeting? Are you concerned about it propagating on social media or just?
No, I've just, I think I did it because we've always kind of done it that way. I mean, I know that's sort of the an arcane suggestion is I could post it. I usually just post it, an hour or two before, and I know that we used to do a short. I think Tom, when you were started them, I think it was like about 20 minutes, 30 minutes to avoid like anyone. We had only one occasion of someone trying to get nefariously into one of our Zoom meetings. It only happened once. But could I permanently post it or put
Well,
it,
I was not suggesting permanently. It's just that when you send out, what happens with me is I get an email from you from the list
Yeah.
announcing that there'll be a meeting in a week.
Yeah.
And that's the moment when I think about it and put it on my calendar.
Got it.
Okay. It's not a big deal. I was just curious because we also in our other groups were concerned about that whole thing. We certainly asked people not to post this on social media,
Right.
but Zoom has done a credible job since they came online. They were very insecure. You heard about what you referred to Zoom bombing,
Yeah.
and that does not happen anymore.
No, it's
that's they
yeah.
plugged those holes.
Yeah. It may be just some experience of earlier versions. You're right, Bob. I could probably just as easily post it the day of my announcing the meeting, but I eventually have to repost it eventually because someone will say, "Oh, I lost the email," so I invariably have to repost
I'm
it.
not suggesting you make a change. I was just saying maybe something
Yeah.
we could learn. What I do is I
No.
send an invitation out the Wednesday night before the Sunday meeting, and then I have an auto resend 3 hours before the Sunday meeting.
That's a
But
good
it
idea.
includes an ICF file, which is the common file format for an entry in about 10 different calendar systems. So attached to the message, it just appears if you're using Outlook Calendar or Google Calendar or whatever, Yahoo. So it just gets into everybody's calendar right away. And then when it pops up in the calendar, when they click on the calendar item, there's the link right there. They don't have to go back to their email.
Yeah.
Um,
We might be able to do something more imaginative because right now it's fairly straightforward. But you're right, Bob. I could probably actually make this more efficient. It's not something I've explored because I've actually been dabbling, working on the new website. That's sort of an ongoing project. So it's on the list of things. That's a good suggestion, actually.
If you want to chat about it, that's fine. But it wasn't my place to suggest you make a change. I was trying to think about, okay, how do people do things, and what can we learn to make our meetings, my end of the world, a little bit better. So
Bob, I might run, talk to you when I free up because I'm always into making things a little more efficient. I mean, that's why we're looking at improving our website and other things, just because we, just to, evolve and also make our lives a little more efficient. So, if we can do things a little more, not work harder, work smarter.
Okay, well, you have my address in your email list, so if you ever want to reach out, and I'd love to learn. And I thank Bob Harris for sharing his contact information, and I'll look at maybe, aggregating my collections and seeing what I can do through your group. And I thank you all. I know many of the people have left, but you've been very, very warm and welcoming to an infrequent newcomer. So thank you.
Bob, you're always welcome.
You've contributed over the years, Bob, and I know you will continue to do so. And I know that the groups that you actually run, you have some interesting things to say about that too. But I think we're probably pretty late, John, and might want to quit this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have some presentations, John. They're not commensurate with your time frame right now, but we could talk about them.
Absolutely.
But I have a whole presentation on the life and times of Nikola Tesla.
Oh, awesome.
And I also have a big thing on how the computed tomographic scanner was developed, because that happened to be something I did in my career, and a few other little things like that. But they're all 90 to 100-minute presentations right now. So that's why we can talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about it. If we did, we would do it. We literally would be start almost on time with only a short couple of minutes start if we were to pull it off. But yeah, but let's definitely talk about it. That sounds like really intriguing topics.
Okay.
And I welcome it. So I appreciate you even offering.
Thank you.
So at any rate, gentlemen, it was a great conversation. Really appreciate everybody attending, and looking forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Sounds
Nice.
good.
Thank you, John.
Take care.
Thank you, John.
Stay well.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Tesla would be great, by the way.
Yeah, I know. That would be very appealing.
Also the cat skip.
Take care.
Like, thanks.